All right, boys and girls, good morning, good evening, good afternoon. Let's go with the lesson. Today we are going to talk about port security concepts, best practices for CCNA networking fundamentals. So let me just share with you what we have in the agenda for today. Introduction to port security, threats to ports, port security overview, security modes, uh, violation mode, configuration, verification, best practices, a case study, benefits and limitations, future trend, and so on. Actually, this one I need to change it a little bit because there is no Q&A since part of this bootcamp, if you have questions, you just ask in the section for questions in the videos and the lessons. So I'm just going to improve that. Give me just a second. Let's go, let's go. So this is the agenda that we have for today. Let's start doing some business here. I just want to double check on something real quick. Okay, yes, we got it. Control access to switchboards. Mm, Prevent unauthorized devices and the first line of defense in LAN security. This is some of the topics that we will be covering today in the introduction to port security. Now, the first question is, which threats do we have here in the switching ports? Let's go with the next slide. When we talk about threats to switch ports, uh, we have some of the followings. For example, MAC flooding, unauthorized device connections, rogue access points, and network sweeping. So let's talk about objectives of port security. Between the different objectives that we have, restrict unauthorized access, limit MAC address per port, support security policies, and provide accountability. How port security works. Switch pins MAC addresses to ports, only allow MACs to send traffic, violation triggers configure actions. So those are basically the way that port security works. The switch pins MAC addresses to ports. It only allowed MAC addresses to send traffic, certain MAC addresses, and violation trigger configuration actions. You will learn more about that in a moment. Some of the port security modes that we have are static MAC, being assigned manually, dynamic MAC, that is learned automatically, and finally, sticky MAC, learn and save in that configuration. If we talk about violation modes, we have to think about protect, drops, protect, restrict, and shut down. What does protect do? It drops unauthorized traffic silently. What does restrict do? Drops plus logs violation. And finally, we have shut down. Puts port in error disabled state. Okay, let's go. Now we have the port security configuration. And how do we do it? Basically following the next steps. Let me just write here for a moment. We are within the switch. What's the first thing we do? Interface FA01. We access that specific interface. So that's the first step. Next, switchboard mode access, switchboard port security, switchboard port security maximum 1, switchboard port security violations restrict, switchboard port security MAC address sticky. Those are the steps, and we will practice this in a lab in Cisco Packet Tracer later on, so you can have like a feeling of the real experience with configuring port security correctly. Let me clear these drawings and move on. What is another example of the configuration. Here we have it. The interface FA0/1 has two maximum of MAC addresses. The violation that we currently have is restrict for this specific mode, and the sticky MACs are enabled. Okay, that's basically what we have for an example of configuration. Let me clear the drawings and let's continue moving on. What else do we have? Well, when we are validating or verifying port security, we can do it with a show port security command, show port security that specific interface, in this case FA0/1, or show MAC address table secure. Those are some specific commands. We will be using some of them during the lab. Let's continue moving on. Let me clear the drawing for a moment. And best policy and design. So these are some of the best recommendations that we can currently have for a good design. Document port usage. That is one of them. Segment users and devices. Enforce least privilege, meaning that you have you need to have the correct roles. For example, one guy is the administrator, the other guy is from human resources, the other one is for finance. Only the administrator will have the access to the equipment, the correct access and effective access. And finally, disable unused port. That is another great practice that we as network administrators do in a day-to-day basis, in a day-to-day work. Okay, let's clear the board for a moment and continue learning about best implementation practices. And these are some more. Now we have, let me just use the highlighter for a moment. Let's change to a green color. Use sticky MACs for trusted hosts. Limit number of MACs per port combined with 802, the 1x authentication, and finally apply access, all access ports. Those are some of the best practice implementation. Okay, let's change back to the drawing. Let's continue with the red one. Let's clear this. Moving on, we have, when we're talking about monitoring, these are some of the best practices that we can talk about. Audit regularly, enable syslog alerts, use SNMP traps, monitor error disable ports. Best practices incident response, identify unauthorized devices, quarantine suspicious ports, escalate to security team to the escalation properly with your security team, and finally update policies on a regular basis. Let's move on. Let's move on. What else do we have? We have a case study, and that is basically the 802.x user base authentication, then the DHCP snooping prevent roach DHCP. That is an attack that cyber hackers use to attack. Um, what else? DIE prevent ARP spoofing. That's another mechanism against malicious attackers. And finally, NAC zero trust. So those are some of the integrations and other features that we have in order to prevent malicious attackers. That's basically what we have here. Let's continue moving forward. And now we have the case study, corporate LAN, HR VLAN for security enable, Mac, Mac 2, Sticky Macs for PCs, ROG laptop block. That is another example of a case study in a corporate LAN. Let's try to digest this a little bit better because it's just too much information at the same time. So another case study that we have in a corporate LAN is that HR VLAN must have the port security enabled. There is a maximum of 2 MAC addresses. Depending on how many employees need this access, you have to calculate. The sticky MAC address for the PCs is also another recommendation. And finally, a ROG laptop block. So those are some of the recommendations that we use, but you can actually nowadays with the artificial intelligence, you can find more recommendations in order to do the correct implementation for your security ports. Configure your devices accordingly. Let's clear the drawing. Let me just change to red again. Let's move on. Let's move on. Now we have some benefits of port security. Prevent unauthorized access, reduces insider threats, ensures accountability, improves network hygiene. Limitations of port security cannot stop MAC spoofing, limited scalability in large networks, require monitoring, can disrupt if misconfigured. Future of port security, we have network access control, zero trust architecture, automation and AI monitoring, and integration with SDN, software-defined networks. That is a topic that we will cover later on during this course. Let's summarize. So we have talked a little bit about port security and the way that it protects switch access. It supports multiple modes and violation options. It requires policy and monitoring. And finally, we talk about some of the best practices and tools combined. So I think we're pretty much done with this. Yes, we are done. It's been a pleasure to give you some of the basic topics and fundamentals about port security. In the meantime, take care, boys and girls. I will see you at the top of success. And until the next lesson, remember, practice makes perfect. Goodbye.